Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
I thought I'd liven things up, Robin, because we're going to be rejuvenaged in just a bit.
Yes, we are.
Not rejuvenated. I didn't say it wrong. Rejuvenaged. Dr. Ron Kaiser has written a book that will make you say, oh, okay, I want to be younger again, or at least feel younger. The book is called Rejuvenaging, The Art and Science of Growing Older with Enthusiasm. And if I could connect that to Christmas songs, here's the thing I've always thought about Christmas songs. When I was a kid, I always realized that I liked music different than my parents did, right? And then when I still am a parent, but my son is an adult. But when I was a parent of a child, his music was different than mine. And now that I'm older than that, and that music is way different than the younger people, right?
Yes.
But at Christmas time, there's a few songs that we all like, maybe by different artists, but the songs are the same. Mm-hmm. Isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting.
I don't even know where I'm going with that. Just a thought I had there. Dr. Ronald S. Kaiser is a licensed psychologist, the director of psychology at the Jefferson Headache Center at Thomas Jefferson University, and his book is called Rejuvenaging, The Art and Science of Growing Older with Enthusiasm. I have so many thoughts about this because I'm right there, Robin. Good morning, Doctor. It's an honor to have you on our show.
Thanks for having me. Nice to be with you, Larry and Robin.
Oh, you're welcome. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Philadelphia.
How's your weather? Did you get a bunch of snow?
No, we missed the snow. It's actually quite warm here. We expect to be clobbered by some rain as the day goes on, but we're going to miss snow.
You are in South Pennsylvania, so it should be warmer.
Yeah, we've already had snow once.
So, you know what? So let's talk about that for a second, because that's one of the things for me, whenever I'm in fun weather, whether it's out at the beach and I see all the bikinis and everything. I mean, I may look old, but I don't feel it.
Good for you. Good for you. Let's get more people saying the same thing.
So, I mean, is that bad? Is that unhealthy? Because, I mean, as long as I know, that I am old, I can't obviously fool the young girl into thinking I'm not. Right?
Yeah, but the reality is, being old is just one part of you. There are lots of other interests that you have. There's a lot of other things that keep you going.
Yeah.
Probably a lot of interests that you share with a lot of younger people, not just in relation to music, but sports and other activities and so on. So I think it's real important to not look at age as the defining factor for you.
That's very smart.
That brings up a lot of negative stuff when it should be a really positive and fun time of life.
But you know what? Here's the truth about the way I feel as far as age. I really don't feel old unless maybe I'm with a lot of younger people who are pointing it out. But if I'm just hanging out with Robin, I don't feel old at all. We're the same age, so I don't feel old.
Yeah, well, I think self-delusion is a really great skill at this age. I mean, I walk down the street, and I assume that most of the people that I pass are older than I am. I suspect it's not true, though.
That's funny.
You encourage people in your book to get out of their house, especially if they're living alone, to meet people. I mean, it could be as simple as going to the grocery store just so you can strike up a conversation.
Yeah, that's real important, Robin. We found out the science is pretty strong on this, that loneliness is a killer that in many ways is as bad as things like smoking, obesity, and some of the other kinds of things that we worry about. So it's very important for a couple of reasons. One, it's a lot more fun to have people around, and secondly, it actually does make changes in the brain in a positive direction, and that's really what keeps you going and fuels the aging process in a positive direction.
Really? Are there any tricks to help, not only for a trick as in you're tricking somebody, but maybe hacks? The younger kids say hacks now. Mm-hmm. Kind of little things we can do to bring ourselves out of that? Maybe, I don't know, like volunteering for something? Is that part of what we should be doing?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I encourage people to recognize that there's not a mandatory retirement age in most jobs in this country. So unless you're in one of those jobs where there is a mandatory age, sometimes you can just keep your mind active and be helpful to others, both in performing and mentoring and so on, by just staying part of the real work life. Second thing is there are what I call 4 keys. There are 4 areas in which it's important to focus. One is, are you keeping your mind active? Are you doing things that are keeping your mind active? As we mentioned before, that the social involvements are quite critical. And also, what are you doing from a health standpoint? You know, are you eating healthy? Are you getting sufficient sleep? And most importantly, and this again has been verified by the science, are you exercising? Pretty critical thing for somebody in the aging years.
Yeah. So what age does this philosophy need to start becoming part of our lives? I mean, when I was younger, I had a girlfriend, and she was maybe 2 years older than me, and we were in our 20s. And she used to say, I'm getting so old, to herself, about herself. And I would say, no, you're not. You're 23 or whatever she was. You're not old. And now that I'm, 64, I think to myself that I don't even feel as old as she was expressing back then.
Yeah, no, that's a critical factor. It all really starts with the mindset. And I think that at any age, the important thing is to really plan to do things, to have activities in the various areas that I've identified. And then there's a thing that I call the active default, that you plan to do something, whether it's a volunteer activity, whether it's an exercise, or whatever it may be. You plan to do it, and then you have to actively not do it if you don't feel up to doing it. But, I mean, I might never get to the gym unless I make appointments with myself to get there on a regular basis. And I do. I take a yoga class. The class is going to go on without me if I'm not there, but I'm more likely to get there because I know there is something there. I do work on a regular basis, as you guys do. So, I mean, I think that having not just goals, but having kind of a structure for implementing them is a pretty important thing. And I think that's one of the problems that sometimes impacts negatively on people when, say, they have retired, they don't have a place to go, they don't have any accountability for this. So it's a little harder, but it's important that they structure in times to be active.
And that's why you're encouraging people in a part of your book to specifically challenge themselves, because when a person runs out of having a purpose, they just become very lethargic and just don't want to do anything anymore.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not just a matter of, kind of a nothing happening kind of thing. Something is happening. The brain is not growing. It's very vital for the aging process to take place positively, to stay active intellectually, socially, and in terms of physical activities. But also, one of the things we found, you had mentioned, Larry, about volunteering, doing good for other people actually increases the brain benefits that come with this.
Yeah, I think that's right. One of the things I want to tell you that is inspiring to me, based on your biography, unless I'm reading it wrong, it says here, many of your professional contributions have occurred since the age of 70. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, I'm looking at your photo. I don't even think you look 70. So is it fair for me to ask, how old are you?
Well, number one is lying about photos part of your job. I appreciate what you're saying, but the photo was taken within the past year. I know, probably within the past 6 months. Last Monday, I had my 81st birthday.
Oh my gosh!
Wow!
Okay.
Happy birthday!
Okay, so you are proof of the, what did I say, Robin? Proof of the pudding? Proof in the pudding?
Yes.
You're the pudding. So whenever I hear stories that of people who've made great accomplishments, like at a later age, like what was that thing we had? Grandma Moses. Mm-hmm. People like that, right? What's the guy's name? Colonel Sanders, right?
Oh yeah.
People like that.
Mm-hmm.
And in your case, I mean, they're medical or psychological in nature, aren't they?
Yes. In general, I mean, I think I did a pretty good job throughout my life as a psychologist and helping individual patients. But since the age of 70, when I've developed my website, written a couple of ebooks, and this latest book on rejuvenaging, I've been able to get my ideas out into the world more. In addition to the fact that I just think it's really important to kind of keep going as long as you can, because it's a lot more fun than not doing it.
And your book is very unique in that it's not just your observations, it's you actually have different examples from real people in your book.
Yes, there are a lot of people. I mean, I'd like to think I'm unique, but there are a lot of people who are doing well and being active, and it's got to increase because the number of older people is increasing.
So you thought I was lying about your photograph, but I'm not lying about this. Listen to this. 5-star review across the board. There's nothing but 5-star reviews on Amazon. And when did the book come out? It's brand new, isn't it? November 19th, It says. Yeah.
Yes.
The book is called Rejuvenaging, The Art and Science of Growing Older. I wanted to read something from the book itself. I'm not the book, but I mean the cover. One of the snippets from Rick Hansen, a PhD and author of Resilient, How to Grow an Unshakable Core of Calm, Strength, and Happiness. That's his book. He writes this about this book. This is the best book I've ever read about getting older. It's clear, grounded in science, enormously practical, and full of heart, a gem. So, can you...
Rick's a good guy. I really appreciate it because he's one of the leaders in positive neuroplasticity, and that means a lot coming from him.
The person who picks up the book has already taken the first step because in their mind, they've told themselves that they don't have to feel old, even if they are old, right?
Correct.
Okay, so you got past that hurdle. But if you were in a group of people, let's say last Thursday on Thanksgiving, and you have the woe is me relative, the woe is me, I'm too old to do this, I'm too old to do that, woe is me. How do you convince that person to pick it up a notch and stop feeling that way?
There's a thing I call the TOO excuse, TOO. You can always find something that you're too much of. You're too old, too young, too emotional, too ill, too whatever. And I think it's got to be labeled as what it is, which is an excuse. So, number one, I try to point that out, that there are things that you can do, and I encourage people to start where they are. In other words, you take small steps. If you haven't been exercising, then walking around the block for the next week, once or twice a day, may be enough of a start. If you are having a hard time with respect to dieting, perhaps you can start substituting fruit for a sweet dessert for a while. So small steps in the right direction are important. But there's another thing I point out in the book that I think is it's unscientific, but I think it's probably true. I think when you get 3 older couples together, my wife and I have found out that by the time you get 6 of us, at least one is going to try to turn the conversation into a focus on health. And it really is incumbent upon you to be an advocate for the fact that that's not the whole story. Yeah, there are things that may be harder because we're older and because we may have some very legitimate issues health-wise, but that's not our total self. So those kind of 2 things. Number one, I would try and not let that become a dominant part of the conversation. And I'd encourage anybody to not think in terms of them being too something, but rather to begin to take some small steps.
And you do a very good job of elaborating in the book, but you also synopsisize. You provide a toolkit.
Yeah, I'd like to think in terms of the fact that there are things that you can very specifically do to help yourself in that regard. There's, among other things, I think you can think in terms of what I call the type P personality. You want to be able to be personal goal driven, be proactive, be positive, be passionate, persistent, and also playful. And I think that that's a real important thing that sometimes gets lost at this age. If you've got all of those P's going in the right direction, then that leads to pride. And I think one of the other things that I don't want to dismiss in this process is that there may be help that you may need professionally, whether it be medically, psychologically, things of this nature. I think that that's part of the Toolkit process. And I also, if I can, I put in a pitch for my website, the Mental Health Gym, which has lots of information, blogs, some free materials, and so on to help people in this aging process. So I think we've got to think of this as being active. In other words, if you picture the guy who sits down on the couch and turns on the TV and looks for something to watch, there's no purpose in doing it, but they got to try to find something to fill the space. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do. We want people to have a purpose.
Yeah, I see that. So I want you to talk to the man or the woman who is up in age, who just lost their spouse, and they had felt youthful up until now. The loss of a loved one that's that close to you will sometimes put you on that couch with nothing but that TV, and it starts to have a spiral downward. What do you say to that person if they really don't want to be losing whatever youthfulness they might have had, regardless of their age?
First of all, mourning is a definite part of the process, and the fact that they're really going through a difficult time may be nothing more than a reflection of the fact that they had a very good relationship. You don't mourn people who you don't enjoy the relationship with. So I think the first thing is to kind of accept the fact that this is a process you have to go through, but it has a shelf life. At some point, just like it's important to not see yourself as being too old or too sick or whatever it may be, to not see yourself as being a patient, to not see yourself as being in the early stages of dementia, it's important to not see yourself indefinitely as a mourner. So I would, again, encourage the person to find some activities that they may have utilized before that may have been positive, that may have been ones that they enjoyed with their spouse, and begin to take some small steps in the right direction. And also, I do think that the reality is that depression and other emotional disorders are treatable. It's not a condition like asthma or diabetes. It's a behavior that's going on at this time.
There's a way to fix it.
That's why they've got people like me who do this, who work with patients and help them to begin to get that push if they can't do it on their own.
And sometimes people like change, much to the chagrin of their family. Sometimes people just don't want this relationship anymore, and they'll file for a divorce, and then they'll move away and try to lose all contact with what was once familiar and build something new.
Yeah, and if that's the way that they're building their life, I think that you've got to look at it as the next stage of their life and move forward, utilizing that, because in some cases, there may be too many memories, and I'm not being unique in saying that people mourn in different ways, and sometimes starting over may be an appropriate thing. But it's important that I encourage people, before making a radical change, to consult with somebody to see whether this is really what they want or whether it's the path of least resistance.
I wonder if, looking around, we see people who seem to have their life more in order than others. Do we get clues? I'm going to tell you one that came to mind earlier when you were talking about sports. I had gone to a football game at the University of Florida, and it's very exciting. I mean, oh my gosh, it's just jam-packed with young people just standing up and yelling. And guess what? Among those young people, there are quite a few old alumni that used to go to that school. And I'm talking old, like me and you. Okay, up there. And they seem youthful. They couldn't be out on the football field at this point in their lives, but they can be screaming and shaking pom-poms. And they just looked youthful, even though they look like they felt youthful. How about I put it that way?
Yeah, that's one of the pluses of being involved and active and so on. There's no age limit on, who can cheer for a certain sports team or who can be involved with a political party of a particular type or some community endeavor. So I think, one of the points I make in the book is the fact that I consider it important to have young people in your life, not just family members, but it's one of the benefits of those of us who work on a regular basis. I mean, in my setting, I always see med students, psychology graduate students, interns, and so on, and the feedback you get from them is a real positive thing. I'm sure you get the same thing at the radio station and what you see at the football game. I mean, if you are behaving in the same way as a 20-year-old, that says something about where you are in life. You've got some shared interests, and that keeps you from thinking about being too old.
Yeah. You know who else comes to mind? The guys, again, that are up in age that are doing the 5K runs. Mm-hmm. Or we have bicycle trails around here, and Robert and I have been on bicycles, and quite often we get passed by these guys that are 20 years older than us. Maybe.
They're quick.
Yeah. Just right past, yeah.
Yeah, one of the examples I have in the book is of a person who entered his first bicycle race and noticed some older people who really looked fit and trim and so on. And after the race, he spoke with them, found that many of them are actually triathletes who participate in really intense competitions, and some of them were in their 50s and 60s and early 70s.
Wow.
I love the title of the book, Rejuvenaging, because it all depends for me on perspective of where I want my life to go now.
Well, I'm glad you like the title because I trademarked it, so I have my own word. But I think more importantly, I hope that it helps not just you, Robin, but others in terms of seeing the way that you don't have to look at this as a time for running out the clock, but rather to be, positive, to see it as a time for thriving and flourishing.
Excellently said. I just love this.
I have a copy of Dr. Ron Kaiser's book. Again, it's called Rejuvenaging. If you would like the copy that was sent to me, you can call, and I'll pick one caller at random and give the book to that person, and it'll be waiting for you here at the station. The rest of us have to go buy it. Let's see, I found it on Amazon. It's got 5-star reviews. It's available as a Kindle. Do you have a different website you want to recommend?
Well, it's available on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble, and while that's the easiest way to get the book, you probably can ask in your bookstore for them to order it. And I'd also encourage, obviously, with a bit of prejudice on my part, I'd encourage you to sign up as a member of the Mental Health Gym. It's free, and there will be an ongoing source of information that hopefully can be helpful to supplement this book.
And is that website thementalhealthgym.com?
Yeah, www.thementalhealthgym.com. And if you have any questions of me specifically, it's ron.kaiser at thementalhealthgym.com.
Dr. Kaiser, thank you so much. Enjoy the holiday season, and thank you for what you're doing for the rest of us.
Thanks a lot, Larry and Robin.
We'll be right back. This is WOCA Ocala.
Fox News, I'm Chris Foster. President Trump tweets, "We will close the border permanently if need be. Congress, fund the wall."